this record that was like 20 years old, and it was 400 meters, and I got off the track, and all I wanted was my mum to give me a hug, and the first thing she said to me was, "You slowed down a little bit at the end. You probably could have pushed a little harder."
Welcome back to the Open Up podcast and to episode 95 with Alice Round, nutritionist, mentor to trainers, and online coach. She is empowering women through mindset and fitness, and I'm so stoked to bring this beautiful soul to you. Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you for having me. Like, where do I look?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's dive straight in. Deep question straight off the bat.
Yeah.
Could you please describe the way that you view yourself as a woman and or human?
Oh, that's a big one, just straight in there. I think today, are we talking today currently? I would say it's very different to probably if you asked me the same question 5, 10, 15 years ago. So today I'm 31 years old, and I guess I would honestly say I'm probably the happiest I've been in my life in a very long time, and I actually feel confident in the woman that I am today. Obviously everyone has their days of not so great, but I can happily say that I'm happy, confident, motivated, excited about the future, which is a very different place to where I've been in the past. So I guess that kind of sums me up. Determined, strong-willed, and just a no bullshit kind of person, and that's kind of sums me up. And I hope what people see on social media when they meet me, I hope is the same thing that they get in real life. So that's kind of always my ambition, you know, show up how you want to be and follow through on that. Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
It's fired me up a little bit.
Good.
Let's dive straight into childhood.
Yeah.
I think your first story that we're going to talk about, or you're going to share, starts at about 16. So can you give us a breakdown or a summary of childhood up until that point?
Yeah. So I've had a pretty busy childhood, I would say. So I grew up actually in Tasmania, not in Perth.
Wow.
I was actually born in Melbourne, so been all over the place. We've travelled a lot. So I grew up in Tassie. My parents were just in Melbourne for a few years for work when I was born, so I don't really remember that part. But grew up with 2 brothers, one older, one younger in Tassie. And my dad's a landscape architect. My mum was just a stay-at-home mum back then with 3 young kids. We were all like 16 months apart, so she went, you know, bang, bang, bang.
Wow.
And then our whole house got flooded, and we had some really bad storms, and it damaged my father's business and everything. So we kind of got to the point where my parents were like, do we move? There was more work around Australia. Tassie was kind of in a bad place at that point in our life. And really early on, my younger brother actually passed away as well. So
wow.
We had a lot of stuff going on, and it was kind of like a time in my life where my parents were a bit like, we've got 2 kids now, it's actually easier to travel, as hard as that was what they went through, and I think everything reminded them of him. So it was kind of like a kind of time where they were like, let's have a fresh start, and I think especially for my mum. So we packed up a caravan, we sold our house, and we went travelling for a year, and I was about 9 at this age. So I missed school. I was homeschooled. So I was homeschooled for a year on the road.
Thornberry style.
Yeah. And my parents would make us go out, and they'd be like, this is the great apostle, this is the apostles. And they'd teach us about things. And it was kind of a bit of homeschool / like on the road, you know, bush flowers. And my dad, obviously a landscaper, so he knew everything about plants. And it was really cool. So we did that for a year. And then I think my parents were running low on income. That obviously needed some more cash, and my dad needed some work. And I even went to school in Alice Springs for 3 months, where Dad picked up some work there. And then my brother broke his arm in 4 places, big injury, and the closest hospital was go to Perth or go to Adelaide. So, because we're in the middle of, he needed a specialist.
Yep.
So that's how we ended up in WA. And then we've been here ever since. So since I was about 10, 11, I think it was 99, I remember, because my football team was in the grand final that year, the Kangaroos, and we won. So that's all I remember from that year. And then we've been in Perth ever since. So yeah, grew up here. I feel like Perth's home now, I think because I left when I was 9, and obviously more than half my life now. And then, had a pretty normal upbringing, good parents. But then really my, I guess, hardship kind of started around high school. I didn't really fit. I never felt like I fit in high school, and I always found that a bit more challenging. I found primary school okay, and I was never bullied, or I was never teased or anything like that, I guess in a direct sense, but I probably as a female back then, didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't feel like that I was one of the prettiest girl or the most popular girl, even though I had friends and had all those things, but I wasn't the top of the totem pole, so to speak. And I was a really athletic kid, so I was known as the sporty girl. That was how everyone knew me. It was, oh, Alice the sprinter, Alice the runner. And I didn't really like that because it didn't make me feel feminine, it didn't make me feel girly, it didn't make me feel attractive. And I was always known as the kid with, calves at 9 years old. So it was always like the little sporty kid. So I didn't feel like that was something that boys found like attractive or sexy. And so I would look, I remember at about 15, 16 at the cover of magazines, and I'd be like, well, what's on the cover of a magazine? And it was, Jennifer Aniston back then. This before social media, shows how old I am. And it was no Instagram, thank God. I think it would have been worse. But I would look at magazines, and you'd look at, Victoria's Secret runway, and there were all these stick-thin glamazons, and that was what was seen as attractive. And they had these, curvy hips and tiny waists, and I was built like straight up and down, sporty, athletic. And I just thought, that looks like happiness. And my whole vision of what happiness was tied to like image at that age. And that was all I cared about. Even though looking back, I had friends, I wasn't being bullied, like there was nothing really going that bad in my life, but I got so image obsessed because the girls around me at school that were the ones I perceived as the prettiest or the most attractive were the ones getting all the boys' attention, all the things kind of given to them. Yep. And instead of embracing who I was, which was really, really good at sport and really athletic and known for that, I kind of hid away from that because I didn't think that wasn't what was typically attractive. And I guess my ideology back then of a happy life was grow up, get married, have kids, be a stay-at-home mum, and kind of do what my mum did. Yeah. And so I thought to do that, I needed to be this attractive, sexy woman that a man would want to see and go, I want to wife that and I want to, look after her. So that kind of was an interesting time because my parents were actually going through a divorce around the same time. So They were having a lot of problems. And my mum will probably kill me, but she wasn't in the best place back then. And we were very hostile towards each other. So it was quite a toxic relationship. And probably at that age was a time when I was really sensitive to how I looked, my body changing. You're going through hormonal changes at 16. And I remember waiting for my boobs to come in and it never happened. And I was like, when is this going to change? And I just think my mum was going through her own stuff and she wasn't realizing how much I was struggling and how much I was obsessing over things. And she wasn't overly complimentary or, and you look to your parents as a role model and they were never really the touchy-feely parents that are like, you're amazing, you're beautiful. They would still say positive things, but we weren't that family that was super like overly affectionate. Yeah. And they would more praise my sport and other things and my education, which is not a bad thing. And when me and my mum have joked about it now, she goes, I just didn't want you to get a big head. I didn't want to tell you were pretty and I didn't want to tell you like certain things because I wanted you to be like humble, which I thank her for now. But back then as a 16-year-old, you just want your mum to tell you that you're beautiful no matter what. So I think that stemmed into pretty much every eating disorder under the sun. So I tried anorexia, it wasn't for me. So I tried that. I liked food too much. So I would try elimination diets. I would try just eating vegetables. I would try just eating this, just eating that, because I would read these things in magazines where it'd be like, Jennifer Aniston did ate juices for a week. So I would try eat juices for a week. And you think about it this way, I used to do athletics for about 2 hours in the evening every night. I would usually play some form of sport at school. I also did netball, athletics, track, like every sport under the sun. So I was training for probably 2-3 hours a day. Plus at school sport, was captain of every sports team. And I was running on empty. So by that point, I was like 17, year 12, like eating disorder, going through my tertiary exams to try to get into uni, juggling all of these things and just falling apart. So that kind of stemmed into more bulimia than anorexia, where I would just food restrict all day and wouldn't eat at school. I remember even falling asleep in class and things like that happening. And then I would just get home and binge. And that behavior just was a vicious cycle. And the problem was I started losing a little bit of weight, I wouldn't say a lot, and then people started complimenting me. So that false like happiness of like, you look, you know, and I wasn't even big, like, let's be honest, I was 50 kilos, you know, I was tiny, but people started noticing little changes and like, oh, your abs are popping out at athletics training because you've got to run around a crop top. Like my body was always on display. So it urged me on in a really toxic way to keep that going. And yeah, it just got me into a really bad place. And the more people compliment me, the more it would stem into that, you know, had guys' attention, had boyfriends at the time, and no one knew about it, like literally no one. Was living at home and I'd, you know, hide it from my parents and all of that, go to any length to not have anyone know about it. And then it got so bad where I got to the point where I would just stop going to social events. I would just isolate myself, because when you have an eating disorder, if anyone's unaware of it, it's a really dark place. So you're very embarrassed by what you're doing, especially bulimia. You're kind of trying to hide it from everyone and act as if you're normal. And when you binge and purge, it puts a lot of strain on your body. So you're constantly vomiting, which has issues with repercussions of acid reflux and bile, and issues with even my teeth and gums. I started noticing changes, hair loss, like all of these things. And even though in the mirror my body was changing, I still looked at myself and saw myself as ugly because of the actions that I was doing. And I'd get bloodshot eyes. People would be like, have you been crying? And that's obviously a side effect to when you're sick and vomiting all the time. So there was a lot of things that I started to see that I knew weren't healthy. And I knew everything I was doing wasn't healthy. I wasn't an idiot.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to, one, stop it, and how to get to the physique that I wanted without that behavior, because I could see that things were improving from those actions. So you're really stuck in this limbo land of like, do I keep doing it and keep getting the compliments, or do I worry that I'll do it a healthier way but I won't look as good and then I won't get what comes with that? So, and that was a bit of a long-winded version of it, but I hope that kind of
that's understandable. Being someone who wanted the attention from guys and wanted ultimately that life that your mum led. Yeah. And now you're bulimic, finally starting to get this external validation. Yeah. Like, oh shit, maybe this will happen. Yeah. I can understand why you fell into that trap and why that became a cycle.
Conflicted. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A couple questions. Yeah. And don't feel like you have to answer this at all. Were you ever able to process losing your brother? Hey guys, just want to take a quick second to give you a word from our sponsors. Hopefully I'm wearing the same clothes I was back in that interview, but don't worry about it. We've got Made It Nutrition. That is plant-based supplements. They're all about the holistic lifestyle. They're all about the mind, body, and spirit, and they're doing that through their high-intensity bodyweight workouts as well as those plant-based supplements. Number 2 is Crossfit Longhaul, the Good Times gym out in Maddington. Now what they do is they offer personal training. They obviously offer CrossFit group training, and they will tailor your nutrition plan to help you achieve your goals. And the reason that I've partnered with CrossFit Longhaul out there in Maddington is because I'm a friend of the owner. I know her, and she's all about that holistic approach as well, combining and intertwining the physical and the mental. So you'll be in good hands there. CrossFit Longhaul out of Maddington. Ciao.
I think so. I was quite young, so I was 4. So I still remember it, but I don't remember it like vividly. But it was more, I think, watching how my parents cope with it. I think that I remember more than actually that loss. And me and my mum have actually been to a psychologist since, because we didn't have a very good relationship for many years. It was quite strained, and I was always like daddy's girl. And then we went to a psychologist not that long ago. It would have been about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was the best thing we ever did. And it was really interesting hearing my mum's side of how she coped and why she was that parent that was a bit standoffish, and why I felt like I was neglected. Yeah. And she said, well, I'd already lost one child, and I'd already loved so hard that if something happened to like you or my other brother, I would just be broken. So she said I kind of pulled back my love and attention because she was worried she'd get hurt. And for me, I was like, well, as a child, I actually thought that she loved my little brother more than me, because she was so sad since he was gone. And it was like, hey, you've got 2 other kids. Like, why not pour all your love into us? So I think that was where even through all the bulimia and everything, I honestly think the biggest thing I wanted was my mum's love and attention, not guys. Like, I honestly think it was that. And I even wanted her to notice.
Yeah.
I used to do little things where I'd kind of like, I don't know, like if I was vomiting or something, I would do it, if the door a little bit open, like subconsciously, it was like I wanted her to know and actually ask. And it was like her not reaching out was a big part of it. So I think as well as the body image stuff, there was definitely like family stuff. And my mum listens to everything I do, so I'm always very conscious about what I say. But she had no idea, and I think that until we sat down with a professional and had them ask us individually without there being any aggression or like anger or anything like that. It took her a while to get why I felt that way, because she always thought that she was a loving, caring parent, which she was. I wasn't abused. I always had food on the table.
Yeah.
I had clothes on my back. And for her, she was like, I've done my job, you're a good kid. Like, you're not a bully, you're not nasty, you've got friends, like you've got everything in her eyes. But the one thing I wanted was just that bit more love and affection.
Yeah.
So I think that definitely, she has, obviously any parent losing a child. And the weird thing was, now that I'm pregnant at the moment and I went through a couple of miscarriages recently, like it didn't resonate with me how much my mum has been through until like that happened. And I was like, and the kid's not even here. Like, like I already love the kid inside my belly more than like anything, and I would take a bullet for them. So I think that being in this place now, it's taken me a while to get to 31 and then to really respect my mum more than ever. Like, and I think she's a bit the same back with me. So even though our relationship's been a bit up and down, I would say we're probably the closest like we've ever been now. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, sorry.
You're right. No, you're right.
Yeah.
You don't need to hold it back here.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, did that answer the question? I went in a roundabout way.
But I can understand how that would happen, not personally from that, but just from some of the people that I talk to, especially when they, more often than not, in breakups. If someone gets broken up with, then they'll pull back and self-sabotage. If they find someone that's really good, they'll find a way to break that up or ruin it, because they don't want the other person to decide off a whim that they're going to go. And so I can understand how your mum would put herself in that position. Yeah,
absolutely. And even when I got into relationships with guys, I always had boyfriends. Like, I don't know why I always didn't think I had like attention. So it was always that thing of like, again, I would get attention, but it wasn't from the one person I wanted it from. That's what it kind of was. Like, even if, I remember winning a state record at athletics. I broke this record that was like 20 years old, and it was 400 meters, and I got off the track, and all I wanted was my mum to give me a hug. And the first thing she said to me was, you slowed down a little bit at the end. You probably could have pushed a little harder. And I was like, Mum, just say well done. Like, she was always, she was like, wanted to keep you humble and wanted to like keep me there. And, she always wanted to push me to like do more. And it wasn't ever in a bad way. Like, she never ever told me off or anything like that. But it was always, she always wanted more. And I felt like with my mum, nothing was ever kind of good enough at that age. I think that was a big part of it. But definitely then, same thing. I remember my high school boyfriend, the boyfriend after that. It took me a while in relationships to understand that, one, I was deserving of love, because I didn't feel that I had that from mum. But luckily I had a really good relationship with my dad. So at least I knew I had good male role models. So I also knew that. Dated a lot of losers. Like, dated a lot of people that I'm like, that was, 4 years of my life that I'm not going to get back. But, but again, you learn. But again, I think I'm a big believer in, until you love yourself, you shouldn't be in a relationship with someone else, because you're not going to be able to, number one, give them what they need, and also receive that love back. So that was something I learned, and I used to jump from relationship to relationship rather than just being okay with being single, So,
And if you're in that position where you don't feel that you're worthy or deserving of love, you're only going to attract someone that confirms that.
Absolutely.
By the way that they treat you.
Yeah, or I'd just push them away. I'd end up ruining it somehow, like you said, self-sabotaging it. And even if I did date someone good, so it took a long time to be like, you know what, you do deserve someone decent, or if you don't, like, that's okay, you'll be fine. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to stick around for someone that's treating you,
Absolutely.
How you shouldn't be treated,
Has there ever been a moment where you've thought or felt, oh shit, maybe I am enough for my mum? Or like that aha moment where you're like, oh, she does actually love me, this isn't her problem?
Probably in the psychologist was probably the big one. So probably only about 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, it's probably taken us a while. Because when they got divorced, I lived with my dad. So she did a full eat, love, pray. She's like a bit of a hippie, my mum. So she went to India, shaved her head, did all that for a year. Yeah, went and lived in a yoga retreat. So she's a yoga teacher. So she went over there and did that. And actually when we had that break from each other and we stopped living together, we actually improved our relationship. I think we were around each other too much. The fact that her and my dad were always fighting, like it just got very nasty. And I think now, it's funny now, like they're all really good friends now. And like we're so lucky that we can have family dinners and they're both remarried and, you know, so it's one of those things that I think sometimes there's just some people that you shouldn't spend as much time with. I think there's some people that your personalities, we are quite different. Me and my dad are quite similar. Me and dad are both Taurians. My mum's Pisces, and like we just kind of clash a little more. So me and my dad are a bit more direct, stubborn, like up front, whereas mum's the sort of person that kind of holds on to things a little bit more. I'm like, cool, it's dealt with, like move on. And I think that took us a little while. I think she was sort of hanging on to some stuff, and I wasn't the perfect teenager. Like, I think I was rebelling a bit with her because of not feeling that love, so I'd be a bit of a brat back, you know? Yeah. I wasn't like, I'd be like, you know, say bratty things to her and whatever, because again, I just wanted that like love and attention. So the aha moment was definitely probably seeing the psychologist. So I recommend anyone that has a strained relationship with someone, like get somebody else to mediate, get someone to sit down, especially if it's a relationship that you want to have. Because I always knew I wanted to have a relationship with her. I just didn't know how to like explain things to her in a way with my words that was the right way without it being she felt it was attacking sometimes when I would talk to her. So having that conversation definitely was a big one with mum. Also, I remember giving a talk at a gym a few years ago, and she came, and she's a funny one. She comes to things, but she doesn't say anything. So you're like, I don't know if you love it or hate it. Like, and then I actually overheard her talking to someone else about me. And the way that she used to speak to other people about me was the way I wanted her to talk to me. So she'd be that mum that'd be like, I'm so proud of her to other people. And I'd be like, just say it to me, mum. And I remember overhearing her say something, and I think somebody else saying, oh, your mum said the loveliest things about you. And I was like, why don't you just say it to me? You know? So I think hearing her do other things, and she just has I've just learned that she's got her own way of showing love. Yep. And everyone does. And I think that you need to be more understanding of that, in the sense that you can't have expectations around what love is. And I think that was a big like learning lesson for me, especially for relationships and things too. Yeah. That's
powerful. That's really powerful. Yeah. And I'm glad you got to that point.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes and sayings is always like, lower your expectations and focus on your appreciations. And that's like one of the life mottos that I live by now.
That's cool.
Didn't do that for 20 years, you know? So I'm not perfect. I definitely wasn't that person. I was very expecting, very demanding, very like, you know, why aren't I prettier? Why aren't I this? Why aren't I that? Instead of going, you know what? Like, you're fucking good at sport. You're like an awesome person. You're intelligent. Like, I would just focus so hard on the expectations or the things I didn't have, rather than all the amazing stuff that I had in my life. So yeah, it's a big one. Yeah. Okay. Which is probably why when you said to me, like, what have been your challenges? And I'm like, I don't really feel like there are any, because I'm trying to focus on the good stuff. Yeah.
And that's probably why you're successful. And that's probably why you're just going to blow up even more as a mindset coach.
Thank you.
Because that's something that a lot of people need.
Yeah.
It pretty much is just reframing the way that you see stuff.
Yeah.
Shift in perspective.
Yeah, I always call it pivoting.
Nice.
Yeah, you just got to pivot another direction, because your focus is going one way and you just got to go, boom, and it has to be a big pivot. I'm like, don't just take a little, you know, nudge around the corner, like take a big pivot. Like, my partner always joke, I don't know, they're going completely off topic. You've seen Austin Powers, have you?
Yes, I love Austin Powers.
Okay, you know the scene when he's in the car and he's like, pivot, and he's trying to move it? Like, that's what I always think of. I'm like, you've got to, like, it's going to be hard and it's going to be sticky, but like, you just got to keep pivoting, and eventually you'll do a 10-point turn and you'll get there. Like, so yeah, that's definitely a big one. Yeah.
Back to traveling.
Yeah.
You went away for that year.
Mum went away. Mum was the
Oh, hippie. Not her travelling, but when you guys left Tassie, I think.
Yeah.
You went in the camper van travelling.
Yeah.
What were obviously it's hard as a 9-year-old to understand back then, but looking back now, were there any lessons that you took away from that time away?
I'm trying to remember. I think like it was so long ago. Definitely going to school in Alice Springs. I remember that time in my life. being in a school where I was one of 4 white kids.
Wow.
So in my class, it was all Indigenous community.
Yep.
And that made me, coming from Tasmania, where there's actually not a very high Indigenous community down there, and being in this class with kids from other cultures, there was also like just a very multicultural school, and I learned a lot about probably other cultures and definitely more understanding of other situations, because a lot of the girls that I went to school with, I would go back to their house and hang out with them, and it was just such a different upbringing to what I had. They weren't as, I guess, privileged as what I was, even though I don't think I was that privileged,
Yeah.
but definitely seeing the other struggles of other children was a big one. And then when you're traveling, like we were living at a caravan, it wasn't like we were living in some mansion by that point. We were at the caravan park and I was going to school. But at the same time, you know, just experiencing different culture was really, really important. And, you know, I was lucky that I was a good sprinter, because they'd go, oh my God, look at the little white girl run. So luckily got lots of friends straight away, but it was really, really interesting to see just different culture. And I think that it's one of the best things that my parents did, because we're at an age where you learn in so many other ways than just books at that age. And them taking us out, us literally living off the land some days, like some days we'd be traveling through the Nullarbor and there's no food for, you know, a couple of days, and you just be off and you've got to go like pick some fruit or whatever, or we'd be living on tinned like Spam out of a can. And all of those things I think are really important as a child. It makes you then appreciate what you have more. And that was probably the biggest thing that I think I definitely learned. Yeah.
That's so cool. And I can understand why you're fairly like empathetic.
Yeah.
From the chat we had beforehand.
Yeah.
I can understand now, being like someone who was placed in a school in Alice Springs with an Indigenous community pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. And it was, very, very different but cool. Like, you just got to be so... And often I was speaking other languages as well, and different dialects, which I didn't even know was a thing until I was there. And I was like, what's going on? Like, so yeah, just different experiences in life are so important. You can get so sheltered in one thing, and that's why I'm so... As much as I hated leaving Tasmania, because I was 9 and had my friends and was in year 3 or whatever, but if you don't have travel and exposure and culture, and I was chatting to one of my clients who's 21 the other day, and she was telling me how she's, you know, getting ready to think about buying a house and blah, blah. And I was like, dude, go travel, like go to Europe, go to whatever, blow your money. Like I was like, you don't need to worry about that till later on. Like, great, mentor. But I was like, you need those things in your life because they add depth to who you are. They add understanding, they add tolerance, they make you appreciate more, like we were saying before, like all the little things. So I think if you're a bit sheltered, like that's where, you know, you often become ungrateful, and that's not a good place to be. Yeah.
And I think the most pivotal point in my life was buying a pop-top camper van and travelling WA.
Yeah.
Literally put me down this path. I figured out I could write because I didn't have reception to be on my phone.
Nothing else to do. Yeah.
So I was just writing and reading, enjoying nature, and just fell in love with it, and it eventually pushed me down this path, and I've realised that I don't need a lot of the shit that I had.
Absolutely. And you probably realised like you had to enjoy your own company. It would probably be, especially if you're by yourself, like that you're like, oh, I've got to like hang out with me because no one else is here. Like, yeah. You know what I mean? It would have really given you like a new understanding and time to just be clear with your life. Yeah,
absolutely.
Probably as a 9-year-old, I didn't really appreciate that as much. And this was before social media and internet and things. So that wasn't probably as much of an issue as if I was to go do that now. But yeah, it's still a really good experience for anyone. Yeah.
Back to school and your, this girl who wants the attention from boys, but you're also very sporty and very good at what you do.
Yeah.
Being very sporty but wanting to be something else, was there any resentment towards being that person at all?
Being which one, the more sporty one?
Yeah.
I think I was not so much resentful because I appreciated that I was good at it, and it was kind of the thing that I guess people knew me for. So I saw the positive to it, and I loved sport. Like, it wasn't something that I didn't enjoy. It wasn't like I was forcing myself to do it.
Yeah.
It was the one place I always felt safe as well. And I didn't really enjoy high school that much. I didn't like the drama. I used to get along with boys better than girls. Like, I still had girlfriends, but I don't know, I just found guys easier to talk to a lot of the time, maybe because I grew up with brothers, but I was always kind of like a, you know, girly guy and that kind of tomboy, which again, I didn't think was that sexy, you know. And at athletics, it was the same. I'd have my guy friends and my girlfriends, and when you went to athletics training, it didn't matter if you were a guy or a girl, you trained with wherever you ran, and a lot of the time I'd have to run with the boys because I was faster than the girls, so, and I'd have fun with that. I'd be like, the boys had to chase me down, and, you know, so I think that I just didn't really feel like I fit in high school, and it wasn't so much that I resented it, but I guess I didn't fit that mold of what I thought was, perfect. So I guess there was a bit of resentment that maybe I didn't have that body that was that. But then when I go to athletics training, no one looked like that. So we all looked very similar. We were all athletic. So that's why I felt like I fit in there. But I was basing fitting in on looks rather than on, other variables like personality and enjoyment and all of those things that I encourage my clients to focus on, rather than being so image obsessed, which is kind of contradictory because I help people get in shape. So that's where my business has actually had a lot of conflict over the years as well. So that's been a big one too.
Yeah, I can understand that. But it seems like you've transitioned into like a mixture of the two.
I hope so. That's where I'm going. I hope that that's going in the right direction. So if you're saying that, that means we're on the right track. Yeah, it's nice when you hear that from other people because you're like, okay, good. The content we're doing is good. What we're putting out there is good. But definitely that was a bit of a transition as well. Was like, well, I know I'm good at getting people in shape, but like, is that mentally good for them?
Yeah.
And that's always something that I kind of battle a little bit, and that's why I'm a little more choosy with who I coach these days and make sure that their mindset's right first before we work on that whilst we're working on the other things. And a lot of the time I'll say we're not even worrying about fat loss for the first few months because we need to sort out what's going on upstairs, And we luckily have a mindset coach and NLP therapist that works within our team. So that's been great too, having him on board. So I think it's hard because I see health and I guess body composition as being really important from a health standpoint, and I'm probably more focused on that than back in the day. People would say, get me shredded, and I'd be like, okay, but to get someone like healthy and into a good shape, I think that that's actually harder than just getting someone super lean for a short period of time and the long-term sustainability of where they're at.
Yeah, it's exactly like what you were saying about being bulimic, losing a bit of weight, being validated by people telling you that you looked good, your abs are popping, but you still saw the same person.
Yeah.
If you get someone in really good shape and they don't have the mindset to appreciate every part of the process,
absolutely.
Once they reach that prize, it's not going to be enough. Yeah,
or if they gain a little bit of weight back, all of a sudden they're like backwards, and that kind of happened a bit when I started competing, because again, competing is one of those things that's the same thing, and people have to realize that being stage lean isn't something that you walk around at year round unless you want to feel like death. But then again, that kind of actually sparked up a few issues with food again around that, because I kind of went from my eating disorder pretty much straight into competing, which was like, looking back, I was like, there was pros and cons to everything in life. But that again is one of those industries that I don't think, if say I competed now, my mindset would be very different to when I first started competing. Because again, I was still quite image focused, but I was in the different mindset of I knew what to do then. I got the education, I got the training, so I knew how to do it, but I probably still wasn't doing it for the right reasons. I was still doing it for image at the end of the day, even though it wasn't eating disorders to get on stage. I was eating better and my nutrition was good and my training was good, but the why behind it, I guess, was probably from the wrong angle when I first started competing, for sure.
That's a good segue into that part of your story. Why did you get into competing?
I got really injured, so I couldn't run, so that was the big catalyst for it. I was trying to get to the point of where I would be aiming to get in the Commonwealth Games 4x4 relay teams. Wow. That was kind of the path I was going down, and my old training partners have pretty much done that now to this day, and got some good friends that are still in the athletics community. So that was always my goal, was to get to like a Com Games or an Olympics, even if it wasn't individual, but in a relay team or something awesome like that. And 400 was kind of the event that I was going for. And then I had 3 injuries back to back. I had tore my hamstring really badly, and then a day before nationals I tore my calf all the way through, and then it was lower back because I started doing 400 hurdles. It was just one thing after the next. My body was just breaking down, and I didn't really know why. I saw a few physios. They were okay, but they didn't give me a great understanding of it. This was just before I started uni and my sports science degree. Yep. So that was a big part of wanting to do that degree, was I wanted to learn for me for selfish reasons. I was like, hey, if I can prevent injuries for athletes, then that can help their careers. That was actually the why behind doing sports science. It was nothing to do with nutrition at that point. It was I wanted to be either a physio or come out the other end and help athletes with their programming or whatever it was. So So back then with athletics, the gym wasn't a big part of what we did. It was like, did you work on the track? We did a little bit of like conditioning work, but nothing was really customized for, okay, well, why did Alice keep hurting her back and hamstrings?
Okay.
It was because I had no butt, but nobody told me that back then. I had no glute activation.
Hard to even imagine that.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Yeah, literally like flat as a pancake. So finally I got this actually pretty good physio in at Waist, and he put some electrodes, I remember, on my butt, and he made me do some like step ups and things, and he's like, your glutes aren't firing at all. So he's like, so when you're running, all your power's coming from your hamstrings, which is why you keep getting hamstring strains, because it's overloading, and same with your lower back. So that kind of happened, and then I was at a transition in my career where I was starting uni, and then I also had finished enough of uni that I was qualified as a personal trainer, and I wanted to transition into doing that whilst going through uni, because it's quite a good job to have. Like, hours are flexible. I also thought it would give me good experience if I kind of wanted to end up somewhere in the sporting field.
Yeah.
So I was actually working at the airport back then, you know, having all my part-time jobs. I've worked since I was like 13, like chicken treat and babysitting were my first jobs,
Nice.
netball umpiring, everything. My parents were always like, if you want something, like, you go pay for it. Never really handed us anything. So yeah, I remember quitting my airport job. I was working at Qantas on the check-in, and then pretty much went into that. And I remember earning about a quarter of what I was earning at the airport. Like, terrible. Any personal trainers or coaches, I was on $12 for half an hour. So I remember that was my wage, and I would do back-to-back sessions. When I was at the airport, I was on like $30 an hour because they pay you really well, and I get overtime and bonuses. But I knew that I had to take a step back because it was something to do with my career.
Yeah.
And that the hours were much more flexible. So I was actually working in a gym in Claremont, was my first gym. And I just actually started falling in love with lifting weights. So I'd never really lifted weights before, and I started researching about strengthening the hamstrings, strengthening the glutes, and started falling in love with that. And I was having a break from ASS at that point, doing my rehab work, and I just kind of enjoyed it. And then I remember the boss at my first ever gym, Michael, if he's listening to this, probably not, and he was a bodybuilder, and he'd done bodybuilding. He was a bit older because it was husband and wife owners, and they had kids and stuff, and he showed me some old photos, and I was like, that's a bit much, him in like a Speedo and like really oiled up, and I was like, well, I've never heard of bodybuilding before. And then one of the other lady trainers there, who was a little older as well, she was in her 50s, and she'd done some as well before. And this was like before bodybuilding was like a big thing. I don't think there was even a bikini division. This was when it was like figure fitness, like quite muscular. And I was like, I don't know about that. Like, that's weird. Like, all oiled up and like bikini and flexing. And I still was lacking a lot of confidence. So I didn't think I could ever get on a stage like that and stand in front of people and be judged on how I looked. So I kind of ignored it and kept going with my rehab. I'm pretty sure I got another injury, and I ended up moving gyms a couple of years later down the track and working at another gym in Perth. And they actually mentioned it when I started working there, and they said, well, you know, ATHS was also hard with uni because the training was in the afternoon. I had a lot of classes, personal trainers work in the afternoon. I was having to go do my running training by myself at midday in 40 degrees in Perth on a track. Yuck. And it just became a bit, I think I started losing my passion for it because the injuries kept occurring.
Yep.
And my times weren't improving. I started to feel like I was going a bit backwards, and I started actually getting a bit of race anxiety. I'd get really nervous because I felt like there was a lot of pressure on me. So the gym was kind of nice because I could train when I wanted, do what I wanted, be by myself, like just be in my zone, because I was never really someone that needed other people to motivate me. And I just started falling in love with it, and seeing my body change and feeling that shift and feeling strong, I think, was very different. And I still love the feeling of going for a run, but it's a different feeling in the gym. And then, I remember stalking down Summer Bernard, and I remember seeing Summer was one of the first ones. She's now my best friend. So going on, she's also pregnant at the moment. So it's funny how, you know, your idols, you know, become your friends sometimes. So I remember stalking down Summer. She was one of the main Perth girls competing at the time, and she worked at Muscleworks, and I went into store and I chatted to her and I asked her what it was all about, and they just brought in the bikini division. So I thought, cool, that looks more achievable than that. And I started stalking. My favourite fitness icon at the time was Jamie Eason. This is making me sound really old. Cover of Oxygen. And I just went, I love that look, but I don't know if that's achievable for me. Yeah. I was still very I was still quite far off in terms of muscle and body fat and all of that. And I just went and asked a few people, and they were like, absolutely, like, it's achievable. And just having that bit of confidence. So then, that gym I worked at put me through my first prep, and that was kind of it. And they didn't know anything about my eating disorders or all the other stuff.
So you still had that at the time as well?
Not really. I'd pretty much through uni, through studying nutrition and everything, I knew what I was doing was wrong. It was like I always knew that in the back of my head, and I got to the point in my career where I didn't want to be a hypocrite, and I'd started personal training.
Yep.
And I was telling all these women how to eat and telling them, helping them out with meal plans and helping them with things, and then going home and binge eating and vomiting. And I was like, you are not a good role model, so you need to sort your shit out, so that was a big motivator for me to get out of those bad habits. It didn't just stop overnight. It was one of those things, it's like somebody quitting smoking or going through anything. You're probably going to have regressions, and you're probably going to have points where you're going forward and back a bit. It's not as easy as going cold turkey. So for me, a win was, if I was vomiting every day, a win was doing that twice a week, and then maybe once a week, and then it might happen once a month. And celebrating those wins rather than seeing it as, a big backward step was probably a big part of it. And that's something I always talk to my clients about as well, because they'll beat themselves up. Yeah, it's a huge one. So that was a big part of it. And then, then got into, I felt like I was in a pretty good place with food, but the problem was the first ever comp diet I got put on was terrible, and it kind of brought it all back up again. They put me on keto for like 15 weeks, and I lost so much muscle. I was so skinny, and I was strict. I didn't binge the whole time. I was like the perfect model client because I saw this goal and I wanted to achieve it. And I think that having structure was kind of what I needed, but the wrong structure. Looking back on it, I think that the problem with the eating disorder was I had no support, no structure, no coach, any of that. Whereas when I had structure and I thought this was normal because I knew no different. So when they put me on that, I just assumed that was a bodybuilder diet, and that's what I had to do. I knew nothing else. I trusted them. You trust professionals. You're paying them money. I'm one of those people that I've always had coaches for athletics. So when a coach told me to do something, follow through.
And if you were an elite performer or athlete,
you did what you were told.
Yeah.
Because you got the result. Yeah, exactly. And I was getting the results. I was looking good, but I was feeling terrible. But I was like, okay, this must just be bodybuilding. You don't know any different. And that's what I always say to my girls that prep with me now is I'm like, you are lucky you got a good coach to start off with, because if you get one of these bad ones and you don't know that that's bad, then you run into problems. And it's funny, my clients who come from other shocking coaches always appreciate me more because they're like, I've been through that. So I did that for, I think, 15 weeks. Yeah, rough prep. Got into my first show, did not place. I came 4th in the IFBB. Bikini was my first show, so I went straight for the hardest federation. Didn't know anything about it. I was like, oh yeah, I'll jump into that one. I was so naive. I didn't know there was drugs in the sport. I was like, knew nothing about it. This little skinny natural athlete getting up there. Not that everyone takes drugs, but I was unaware of no one. I was like sheltered in the gym I worked at. And I remember getting off stage and I was a little disappointed because the gym had really hyped me up. They'd been like, you're going to do so well, you're going to smash it, which is again another thing I don't do with my competitors. I'm like, let's go in and be humble, and if we get a call out, awesome. And that for your first show should be your focus. And I went and asked the head judge. I went and sat down with old Mike O'Mara and I said to him, what's my feedback? And he goes, you are so skinny. He was like, you need to gain some weight. He was like, you need to put on weight. You need to look healthier. Your face was gaunt and malnourished. You need to take some time. You need to build some muscle. You need to build your butt. You need to do all these things. And I was shocked because I thought it was going to be come in leaner, come in harder. And I thought bodybuilding was just be shredded and you win. So that was a bit of an eye-opener for me in that I had always associated low body fat with happiness, low body fat with winning. Yep. And when he told me it was more he also said, you looked really nervous, your posing wasn't great, your presentation could be better, all these things. I was like, wow, okay, there's more to it than just walking up there and standing in a bikini and being awkward. I need to actually look confident. And I think from somebody that lacked so much confidence, I felt like I was just faking it on stage. And I probably was for the first few years. But the more I competed, the better that became. And I learned about that it needs to come from other places. So safe to say I fired those coaches after that first comp. I prepped myself for the next show, which was actually only 4 or 5 weeks later. And I actually ate more food. I started bringing carbs back into my diet, doing all the things I'd learned about through uni and other coaches, and then won the ICN. So that was a big eye-opener. And Sam Mitchell, who runs the ICN, she was amazing. I remember messaging her about the show and going, look, I'm not sure if I should compete. Can you give me some feedback? She sat down with me. I remember in Joondalup at the shopping centre. I was at ECU at uni, and she had a big chat with me and told me all about the federation and told me what I needed to do, and was so lovely, gave me so much of her time, and we're still friends now. And I was chatting to her the other day, and yeah, she was just awesome. And she was like, you have so much potential, but you need to eat more, you need to train less, you need to do all these things and you'll be fine. And so won that show, sports model, and then went back to the IFBB and then ended up winning later on. But it took a little while. I came from, coming fourth to coming third to coming second in the IFBB. It took a little longer. But I learned a lot about that there's more than just the image with bodybuilding, which is funny because people think it's such an image-obsessed sport, but you have to show confidence on stage. And if you've got no confidence, that's not just going to magically come out because you look good. And I think I thought that was going to happen. So it really helped me grow as an individual. And that was why I don't ever regret bodybuilding, even though after that first show, I remember struggling a little bit with binge eating because of being so restrictive.
Yep.
But definitely if you bodybuild the right way and you have the right mindset going in, I think it can really actually help with confidence. So yeah, I definitely don't regret it. It's a big part of, I always say it's a big part of my journey, and I really get upset when some people that are successful coaches online now say, oh, bodybuilding, it was so bad. And I'm like, but it built you for where you are.
Yeah.
You've got to appreciate your path. And yeah, that's kind of the bodybuilding scene, I guess. Yeah.
In terms of what I find really interesting is taking that feedback and then letting go of your coaches or firing your coaches and then coming back again. For someone who would have, I guess, failed in most people's eyes, and to get that sort of feedback, how did you allow yourself to take that feedback and then to come back and become better? Because most people, if they would have failed, would have just ditched it altogether.
I guess it's the same with my athletics. I was never the best runner, but I was the hardest working person in the room. Like, my coaches would say that. They'd be like, I remember coming to WA and winning everything in Tassie, and then I came over here and my mum was like, I don't know what they feed them in WA, but you're the smallest girl here. She was like, I don't know if their chickens have hormones in them. She was like, I was just little, like I must have missed my growth spurt. And all the girls were like bigger than me, more muscular, just better. And I remember doing my first show in WA, I had a running race in WA, and I got into the state finals, but I came like sixth. And that was I was winning before in Hobart. So I was like, what's going on? Bigger state, more people, like, you got to man up. And again, I didn't ditch athletics then. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to seek out the best coach. I remember going and approaching this coach at 13 years old, walking down. And I said I didn't have confidence, but I had confidence in some areas. And I knew that she coached some really good athletes that I looked up to that were like 18 at the time. And I said, oh, hello, will you coach me? And she was like, no, you're too young. And she was like, nope. And she was like, but I suggest this coach for you. So I went to that coach for a year, and then I used to run past her all the time and like look at her at the track and gradually built my way up. And when I was 15, I went back to her and I said, can I start now? And she was like, come and do a training session with us and we'll see how you go. And just like smoked everyone. And she was like all the 18-year-olds and I was like 15, because I just kept going. Like, I might not have beaten them on the first rep, but I was like in there like a little workhorse, and she used to call me a little Energizer bunny. So I think that me learning that, you have those moments in life where you're like, okay, I know I'm good at something, and then someone's better than you and you're like, oh shit, I've got to like step up my game a little bit. And so I think coming from that, not being the most naturally gifted at arts, but working really hard, I knew that I could do the same with bodybuilding. And I knew that if I enjoyed it and I was passionate about it, that I could get better. And I don't have the best genetics for it, and I know that, and I'm still working on things now. But I also thought it was a cool sport that you could chisel your body and shape it in a way that you would improve. And I felt like there was a lot you could do yourself, and it wasn't as much down to just performance. You had to have the grit, you had to have the grind, you had to be willing to diet hard, and not a lot of people are willing to do that. So I knew that I might never have the perfect shape, but I knew I could improve things. And I actually really liked getting feedback. And I remember getting feedback somewhere from shows, and they wouldn't give me any. And I'm like, tell me what I need to work on, So maybe that came again from stuff with my mum, where she was always so like giving me feedback.
Yeah.
And now I see it as a good thing, because if I didn't have her doing that, like, I probably never would have been where I was. And when we've chatted about it, she remembers us coming to Perth and that happening and me getting beaten. And she was like, what are you going to do about it? Like, do you want me to drive you to training, or do you want to cry? Like, And I remember her pushing me, and she would always take me to my training and be there for me. So even though her love was a little different, I think that it made me who I am. So that's why I appreciate her like more now, even though it was a hard, 4 or 5 years for us. But I think with bodybuilding, if you have the right mindset, it can be very motivating. If you're somebody that has been that kind of snowflake as a child and never been like given feedback or never given that, you're going to struggle. Like, don't even think about it, because you got to be ready to come off stage and then say, look, you were too fat. Like, you needed to lose another 10%. And if that's going to upset you, like, you know, it's not the sport for you. So it's a subjective sport. And that's the biggest thing I learned as well, was that you might not place in one show because that judge doesn't like your purple bikini. And then you might go and wear the same bikini the next weekend and win. And that was probably hard coming from athletics, coming from you cross the line first, you're the winner.
Yep.
Going to then bodybuilding, where it was like, it comes down to so many other things. Like, you might just look really nervous. And even though your body's number one, they might bump you to number two because you lose marks for presentation. So that was interesting, and it made me also kind of then enjoy the journey a little bit more, because I knew that I would go in with the mindset of, look, if I didn't win, that's okay, as long as I get feedback and I'm happy with what I put on stage. As opposed to running, it was like, well, yeah, you still went for PBs and times, but you wanted to win. So a little bit different there. Not to lie and say you didn't want to win bodybuilding, but you're a little more realistic that a judge might just not like you, and that's okay, and you've got to be cool with that. So yeah, that's the hard part of that sport.
One question that I want to ask is, you spoke about having confidence on stage.
Yeah.
Knowing that you train girls to do that now.
Yeah.
Are you able to fake that confidence and do well in bodybuilding, or do you have to build that mindset that you are so content within yourself that you are confident?
I think you can do a bit of both. I say to my girls, I'm like, you got to kind of fake it till you make it a little bit. I still, when I get on stage, still get nervous. Like, there's no way I've ever done a comp. And I always say nervous is a good thing, because nervous means you're excited.
Yep.
But you've got to see that as excitement rather than like, oh, I'm nervous, I'm going to stuff up. So I think excited energy means that you care as well. If you're nervous, it means you give a shit, you know. If you're not nervous, then it's like you may be too laid back and need to be a little more, you know. But I think that, I've got 10 girls competing in a week's time in the ICNs. That's my biggest show I've ever had with a lot of competitors. And it's really interesting seeing them all, because most of them are first timers. And there's a couple that have amazing physiques, but are really shy girls. And we did the big group posing yesterday. I made them stand in front of everyone in a bikini on a stage, and you could just tell, and I had to pull two of them aside afterwards, and I was like, you've got it like here to here, but like you don't have it here, because your face is flat and, you know, your shoulders are dropping down, and that's going to come across, and a judge isn't going to look at you. So I said, look, you've got a couple of weeks, like, let's focus on that, because your body's not the problem. Like, and that's sometimes telling my girls that their body looks great, you've got that in spades, but like, if you don't have this component. And the biggest thing with, I guess, competing is, and I guess the faking it, is just practice. Like, I tell them every single day, look in the mirror. You also need to be hypercritical of yourself and look back at a video and be like, I always say to the girls, if you're a judge and you watched your video, would you be engaged? You know, if you watch someone walk out and their head's down and they're not smiling, would you want to watch them and give them your time? I wouldn't. I'd be bored, because they don't know what you've been through. They don't know that you're the shy girl. They don't care. And I think that's the other thing. You've got to realize that a judge only cares about what they see on the day. They don't care if you've lost 20 kilos. They don't care if you've gone through horrible things like domestic violence. They don't care if you've self-harmed. They don't care if you've had an eating disorder. Like, they don't give a shit. So like, you really do have to sometimes fake a part of that, but then practice, confidence, self-love, understanding that you will get better marks if you present that way is really a big part of it for the girls. And I find that them doing that more, it starts to bring them out of their shell. And it was funny, because one of the girls yesterday, I remember watching, and made them run through it twice. So the first time she did it, and she was really nervous, we had a little chat. And the second time she came out, I told all the other girls to really like get behind her. And the whole crowd was like, yeah, you're hot bitch, and like yelling, and like, this is all us in a room. And she just started like lighting up. Like, her face was like, and I was just so proud of her, because it was almost like she just needed that from other people. When no one was saying anything and the whole room was quiet, like, she was way more awkward. And then as soon as she had that little bit of like, and she messaged me afterwards, and she's like, I'm so happy we did that. We got out of my comfort zone before I got on stage, and I didn't realize how good I looked, and like, I'd been so worried about my body rather than thinking about like my face. And, you know, so that really resonates with people. So I think that, the stage is kind of, you watch some people on stage and you know if they've got it or they don't. Like, you see someone walk out, might not even have the best body, and they just captivate everyone because of their smile or their presence. And I think that that's where, then you can work on that, absolutely,
Yeah, and I think the power in faking it till you make it is, you can do all those self-love practices, if you do them over and over again every single day, eventually there's going to come a point where, like you did yesterday with that girl, shouting at her, and it finally clicks in her head like, oh shit, everything I've been telling myself every day, is that actually true? Maybe it is.
Yeah.
And then because of you guys shouting out, giving her that external validation, it finally ticks over, and everything that she's affirmed becomes confirmed by you guys. So that's the power in faking it till you make it, even though some people don't like that saying. It does work.
Yeah, and I can guarantee that when she gets off the stage, she'll probably want to do another one. Like, I just know that it will, if anything, help her confidence, not hinder it.
Yep.
And that's something as well that competitors, newbies especially, I can kind of tell when you coach someone, like, this is going to be really good for you. Because I kind of see myself in her a little bit. Like, I always had the body, but I didn't have the, like, face and the confidence until I competed, and then I kind of did pretty good, but got that feedback that it wasn't my body that was the problem, that it was, like I said, the other things that I was like, oh, well, that's easy to fix. Like, all I've got to do is, do more posing and do less cardio. Like, great. So it was all, I think getting feedback in life is probably sometimes the hardest thing you can get, honest feedback, but I really value it. And I really surround myself with people in my inner circle that are going to be honest with me and give me feedback. And it was funny, I actually caught up with one of my girlfriends this morning who's not in the fitness industry. I've known her since we were like 18. She's a lawyer, like so removed from it. And we had a bit of a falling out a couple of years ago. It wasn't even big, but I was working a lot. I was running a food company. I was PTing as well as online coaching. I was competing, and I just had no time for any of my friends. And she kind of called me out and was like, I think I missed her birthday one year, and she called me out and it was like, I'm no longer putting effort into our friendship because I know you're working and I know you're building a career, but that's like, doesn't matter. I still make time for you and blah, blah, blah. And she called me out on it, and I was like a bit taken aback because no one ever really like called me out on stuff. And it was interesting, we were talking about it today. We were like, from where we are now, if anything, our friendship's better than it ever has been. And when she called me out on it, I was like, you know what? You're 100% right. Like, I fucked up. I need to be a better friend. You always come to my shit. She would come to my bodybuilding shows and scream, and even though she doesn't care, like, she was always that friend. And I was, wrapped up in not so much selfish ways, but I wanted my business to do well. I had a lot of pressure. There was things, but I was still self-focused and focusing all my energy. And I guess I talk about seasons a lot in your life. And my season at that time was really work-focused and career-focused. And I just wanted to be that woman, that hustler. I think I was single at the time. I was putting all my energy into the business and wanted to be this, businesswoman. But then I was missing out on love from friendships, family. I wasn't spending much time in those areas. So her calling me out on it was great. And we were talking about it today, and she said, look, if you had turned around to me and been like, why are you being, it's just a birthday, like, who cares? We probably wouldn't have been where we are today. But the fact that you then went out of your way to make effort and went out of your way to go, you know what, I actually really do love you and I want you in my life and I don't want to lose you because you're a good friend, like, that was a really good turning point. So I think it's so important to not be resentful to people that call you out and stuff, especially if they love you and they're coming from a good place. And that's what I always say to my clients. I say, I'm going to give you honesty, but it's only because I care. I'm not going to tell you that, that it's okay to keep self-sabotaging. I'm going to be like, why are you doing it? Like, let's look at the triggers instead of just like skipping past it and being like, cool, pay me for another week of coaching, like, let's get on with it. I'd rather fire a client. And I actually had that conversation a few weeks ago with a girl. I just said, every week when you check in, it's the same excuses, it's the same bullshit. And I said, like, when are you going to actually change? Because you've had 3 coaches before me and I don't want it to be the same thing where you don't get results, you jump to someone else to try to fix your problems when you're not fixing yourself.
Yeah.
And I said, look, let's take a month break from coaching and allow you to do some work on yourself. And she was like, no, don't leave me. Like, I'm sorry. What do you need me to do? Like, so again, until you are ready for feedback, I think that, you're just going to be in your little bubble and not really grow as a human. So super important. I think bodybuilding gave me a big part of that, a big kick in the nuts of here, this is all the list of things wrong with you. Like, go work on it, even though they were physical things, it made me learn more about improving other areas that are almost like that you don't have to be stuck where you are.
Yep.
Because I think when I was that 16, 17-year-old with this eating disorder, I never thought I was going to get out of it. I thought I was going to have this for the rest of my life and that I was going to be unhappy for my whole life and so image obsessed. And then until you get that feedback that you can be something else, that you can be better, you can do more, you can change, And now I'm such a big believer in people's change and people's growth. And I think it's sad when you hear people say, oh, people can't change, you know, leopard can't change their spots. I hate that saying. I'm like, you can absolutely change who you are. And sometimes it's not so much that you're changing your whole personality, but the best parts of you are more prevalent, and the things that you don't like so much about yourself, you kind of, you know, whittling away, or that you're decreasing how much they show up in your life.
Yeah.
So yeah, change is probably a big thing that I'm...
And I'd say anyone who's saying a leopard can't change their spots is probably hurting.
Probably not the person that likes feedback either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably the person that's like, nope, don't want to hear it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, you know Brendo.
Yeah,
I reached out to him a couple of weeks ago. I was like, man, I've got this really good idea. It's going to work. This is what it is. I want your feedback.
Yeah.
And he was like, no.
Don't do it.
No, that's not going to work.
I think I said that to Brendo about per Fit Finder. I was like, give me some feedback. But it's funny because he's someone that I'll call as well, and he calls me too about things when he was going to leave the sup industry and go full steam ahead with Perth Fit Fam. I was like, yeah, mate, do it. Like, you know, you're crushing it. And me and my partner at the moment are in the process of opening a gym sometime next year. And I've been like on the phone to Brendo about everything because he's obviously in the scene.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do we go big end? Do we go low? Like, where do we fit? You know, and it's so nice to have those people around you, because especially something like a gym, there's a lot of money. That's a lot of risk. Like, and I think the bigger the risk, that's when you really need people around you that are going to go, you know, come on, mate, like he said to you. Yeah, exactly. Don't do it. But he probably gave you some good advice around like why. Like, and it's, you need to have those people as well that are going to explain to you, like, this is why, maybe this is a better solution, or like, let's come up with something together, rather than someone that just shuts you down and then doesn't offer support.
Constructive feedback.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think we've got about 10 minutes before that camera runs out.
Cool.
I really want to cover, I think, the transition. Yeah. And then obviously like cap what it is that you offer.
Yeah, cool. So the transition from like bodybuilding to now. So it was actually funny because I did a show last year, so it wasn't like that long ago, but I had 4 years off between that show. And the reason I had the big break was because I lost my menstrual cycle for 2 years. My hair started falling out. I was having a lot of the side effects of what happens when you get really low body fat. I did 16 shows, I think, in three or 4 years, which is a lot. Went overseas and competed. I was basically trying to get my IFBB pro card. So I just missed out with an international show. I think I came 4th or 5th, and I needed to be top 3 to apply in Australia for my pro card. And then I was in a pro queue and then got really sick and had to pull out of the show. So there was a few little things. I think I kept doing shows because I just wanted to get that pro card. And then when I realized that my health was really important and that I had lost my cycle, I was 26 or 27 by then. And I was like, okay, like, where do you see yourself going? And what is a pro card actually going to give you? And I had a few friends that had pro cards, and it didn't change their life. Like, it didn't open doors. And I kind of started to see that. And I also started to see how well my business was doing. And I was really busy with coaching that I actually struggled to fit in prep with coaching and have a life. And I was like, oh, I can't keep doing this. Like, I kept having to have time off work to go compete internationally. It was very expensive. Like, no one was funding this. I had a few sponsorships, but really, like, it's the time off as well. And that was actually how I fell into online coaching, was like, it was a good way to coach when I was traveling. And there was no online coaches back then. It was literally, I literally fell into it. My clients were like, oh, you're going away. Can you write me a plan while I'm away? And I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of this? Like, I can get paid and be away. So that was how it kind of happened. But the big thing I learned was that my health at that point wasn't something I was focusing on. I was focusing on growing my business through the way I looked physically, because girls would aspire to look like me and then want to get coached by me. So then when I realized my health was pretty bad and that I started learning more about metabolism, metabolic damage, and health and repercussions of that, and how that impacts your reproductive system, I still knew I wanted to have kids even though I was single at this time. That all started resonating with me, and I was like, the only way that you're going to get your menstrual cycle back is gaining weight. And that for me was really scary. So I knew that, and I was a coach, I would tell clients that, but for me to actually put that into practice, that meant that I wasn't going to be stage lean all the time. So I remember gaining about 10 kilos over the course of time. I was working with a coach who's now one of my still really good friends, Lane Norton. He's a very big name out there. Still one of my mates to this day and one of my mentors. And he made me put on weight, and I hated it. I was like, why am I paying this coach to make me get fat? And he made me gain it back. I got my period back. It took a while to come back, and that started happening. He said, I'm not going to let you compete again until you've got your period back and everything there. Then he prepped me for international, and then he's told me I had to go back into reverse dieting and back into gaining weight after the show. And I remember being, at that point, I had sponsorships for Supmart, for Flush Fitness, for different companies, which you'd have to go to expos around the year. And everyone at the expos was shredded. Like, that was how you looked. So if I didn't have a show, I often had an expo to go to, a photo shoot, something that I always had to be in shape for. And it became really exhausting. And that was a big lesson for me. And I got really lost. And I remember just going off Instagram for a while because I started gaining weight. I didn't want to put any photos up. I didn't want to put up photos unless I was like lean, because I didn't think it would be inspiring for people. Yeah. I was like, what's inspiring about going backwards in my mind? That was how I saw it. So I just kind of disappeared off social media for a while. I just PT'd my ass off. I just ground in my business. I started up a food company, all of that stuff. But I didn't want to be seen in public. I didn't want to, I'd wear baggy jumpers when I trained my clients. I would hate training people in summer because I'd have to be in a shirt. And I was very, again, struggling there with my image again, but I knew I was doing it for the right reasons. Whereas back with the bulimia, I was doing it for the wrong reasons. Yep. So at least I had that bit of reinforcement. But then at that time, I didn't want to date guys either, because again, I was like, well, I'm not attractive because I have this extra layer of body fat now. And so, yeah, I just was doing really well career-wise. Externally, it probably all looked just like sunshine and rainbows, and some of my best friends knew how self-conscious I was. And I remember my good friend that's not in the fitness industry asked me to go to the beach one day, and I said no. I was like, what if somebody sees me that knows me from Instagram, and like I don't look the way that I've been posting throwbacks for the last 6 months, And that was when I realized it was pretty bad. So, but I knew I was healthy. So it was kind of this like, again, yin yang of like, I'm healthy, but like I still need time for my metabolism to repair and me to have time off the stage. And so I started getting to a bit of a better mindset with it. And then I actually met my partner, Sean, who I'm with now, who, yes, we're engaged and have a baby on the way. Yeah, he is a beautiful man. And I remember meeting Sean through a client. So I was doing her nutrition. I'd stopped PTing in the gym because my business was so busy and I went all online. I also didn't want to be in the gym because I was a bit self-conscious at that point. And he was doing her nutrition and she was struggling with anorexia. And I was a bit worried because she was going to a male coach and I'd been like her mum. I was like, really, like, we got her to a good place and I was like, don't fuck it up. Like, I've finally got her like eating, like, I didn't want him to say something dumb. I didn't know him. I had no idea, which was weird for the perf fitness industry to me not knowing, but he didn't have Instagram, didn't have any of that. And I DM'd him on Facebook and I just said, look, one of my clients is working with both of us. I'll be doing her nutrition, you're doing her training. I just want to have a chat because I want to make sure we're on the same page, that we support her, that she's going through this journey. And I'm just scared that as a male coach, you're going to say, oh yeah, you're looking jacked, which for her isn't a good thing to say. Like, you want to say you're looking slim and beautiful and strong. And we started chatting and we just like clicked. There were so many things. We'd done the same uni degree. We'd had a really similar background. And I said, look, I think he even said, like, look, just come train. And he worked up at Power Fitness back then. And I remember being so nervous because I wasn't in like the shape that I wanted to be in, but I didn't see it as anything. I was like, it's just this guy and I had a lot of male friends like Brendo and stuff at the time. So I was like, oh, it's just a dude I'm going to train with. Like, it's not anything. And I remember just wearing like a baggy t-shirt and like leggings. And he didn't really have any photos on his social media. And I remember him walking out the gym and I was like, oh my God, he's like tanned and jacked and like really good looking. And I was like, oh, now I'm a bit like nervous. And we went and trained. We trained for like 2 hours. And then we sat on the couch at Power Fitness and talked for about 3 hours. And it was just like the easiest conversation I've ever had. I didn't even think it was anything. I just thought it would be like a friend. And all these people came in from the fitness industry that knew us within that time. And I was just like, oh, he's going to start the rumour mill. And I'd always said I wouldn't date anyone in the fitness industry. And it was just easy. It was just one of those conversations that I'm like, I don't even know if he's attracted to me or not, because I feel like I'm not attractive at the moment in my life. But he's a cool dude. And, if that sparks a business relationship or whatever, like, it is what it is. And then since then we've been inseparable and like it just kind of grew. So I think having him almost like, again, which I don't like it because people think of it as external validation, but I think more him being attracted to me when I wasn't like at my goal body composition was really, really important because it made me like love myself for a whole ton of other reasons. Yeah. And he luckily is a person that didn't care about those sort of things. I didn't also know he was a week out from competing, so no wonder he was like looking so shredded. He kept it on the down low and was jumping into this comp. And the funniest thing was, he actually said a few months later on, he'd never really mentioned it, but he's like, I've known you for like 4 years. He's like, I've followed you, I've known all about you, even though I didn't know who he was. He said, I've even seen you in our gym before, you were teaching posing. And he actually said that my nipple was hanging out and that nobody told me. And I was like, great, so that's how you remember me. So he's like, I remember you from back then. And I was like, great, cheers. He said, yeah, all the guys in the gym were just having a great time that day. And I was like, and nobody came and told me. So he's like, and that was when I was competing and I was really lean. So I was like, so you've seen me like that and you've seen me like this and like you don't care. And he's like, no, like I don't give a shit. Like it's just body fat. Like it fluctuates, like, but your personality is always the same. And I know that you're doing this for your health and that, if you're 5% leaner, I'm going to love you the same. Or if you're 5% bigger, like, and that for me was a big shifting point because I always was scared about getting pregnant. And I was always like, well, if I get pregnant, I have to get fat. And that was always the big like spiral with, even when I was in relationships with guys before that had talked about kids and family and stuff with me. And I'd been in those serious relationships. I always pulled back a bit because I was like, oh, what if like I gain weight when I'm pregnant and they don't like me anymore and they cheat on me? And your brain just goes to all these places. So so being with Sean and going through that journey of like my body has changed a lot since then, and I've competed since then with us being together, and I've got back to a healthy place now, not back to I guess as big as what I had to be to get healthy, a very comfortable, I would say, composition of health. And I think going through that with him was a really, really good thing. And I think that I wouldn't say like I guess I don't want to give him all the credit, but like he was definitely a catalyst for that. But then he says that I did a lot of change in his life. So when I met him, he was in a pretty bad place too. He'd broken up with a girl that he'd been with for about 4 years. He's from England, so he didn't have a visa. She had cheated on him and been quite toxic, had taken money from him, taken everything from him. He was living in this shoebox apartment when I met him. So even though I was doing really well in my career, he probably wasn't doing so well in like other areas of his life. So I think that, again, a partnership comes from two people trying to help each other. And he's like, you motivate me to work harder, grind more. He's like, I have a purpose in my life now, whereas he always used to travel. So he was a bit of a gypsy, worked on cruise ships PTing. He said he never thought he'd have kids, never thought he'd have a fiance, never thought he'd settle down. So that all changed. And I said to him the other day, like, what do you think changed for you? Like, why did you want to have a kid with me? Because it wasn't just me pushing for it. When we spoke about it, it had to be both of us. And he was like, well, I've never been with anyone that I saw being a good mother to my children. And he's like, and I see how you treat your clients and how you treat your business and what you've built. And like, I know that you'll be a good mum. And like, so that was a big shift for both of us. So I think that I think before I met Sean, I was always that woman that was like, you don't need a man, like be strong. And I projected that out there. But at the same time, I think it's okay to be a little soft and to be okay with saying that you do want someone in your life. Like at the same time, don't settle for somebody that isn't worth your time, because I've also dated a lot of guys that have cheated on me and I've stayed with them and I've been through all that. But I think that if you do meet someone that is worth your time and is respecting you and all of those things, then like put the effort in, I think is the other big one, because I'd probably just given up, I think, on people before as well and just been like, too hard, like doesn't tick all the perfect boxes. And if I had been like that with Sean, well, yeah, he wasn't in a great place financially, business, all that, but I had those things. So I was like, well, that's what I can offer. And you know what he's brought to our relationship? Support, understanding, or so many other things. And now the roles again are kind of changing again now that his business is thriving and I'm going to have to take time off next year having a kid. So that would have scared me when we first got together, because I'd be like, well, how are you, it's your turn to step up sort of thing. And I've always been a woman that's provided. I've never expected a guy to pay for things or do all that. So I can't even remember where we were going with the question back then, but I guess that's kind of got back to, I guess, the transition between bodybuilding and where I am now. And even about a month ago, I was struggling with social media a bit because I'd been really sick in my pregnancy, and like to the point where I was in hospital vomiting. I didn't really put that up there because I just don't think you just need to put your shit online sometimes. I told people I was sick, but not the extremes of which it was. The point where I'd literally roll on my computer, do some work, do what I could, go back to sleep, vomit, get back up, do some work, go back to sleep. That was about 12 weeks of my pregnancy straight. Wow. And I just didn't want to be on Instagram. My followers started going down a little bit because I wasn't posting. And then I actually looked at my audience and it was mainly my male followers. So I'm not concerned about that anymore. The help assist you get pregnant guys are like, see ya, I'm not going to be creepy on your photos anymore. But yeah, and that was a bit of a change as well because my social media had been around me powerlifting as well and lifting a lot of heavy weights. And if I wasn't bodybuilding, I was lifting. And women would follow me because I could deadlift 170 kilos, you know. And when you get pregnant, you're not getting shredded and you're not getting strong.
Yeah.
So I kind of was like, where do I fit now? And I had, again, one of those little moments of like, where do I fit, you know? And I think I've had those my whole life. And I think that everyone's going to continue to have those. And again, that's where I had to use that term that I always use, that pivot. Like, well, now you're going this direction. It doesn't mean you need to be a mum. That doesn't need to be your new label. But the way that you're going to motivate women is going to be slightly different. It's not going to be that kind of harsh, like lift heavy, go hard. It's going to be more like about balancing life and still fitting in training and still looking after your health whilst being a mum. And, you know, all of those things. Because I honestly thought people just wouldn't want to get coached by me anymore. I was like, had a little meltdown. I was like, oh my God. And then, you know, had no problems. Like, we've been getting more inquiries than ever. We just hired another coach so that when I do give birth, I can start to back off a little bit more. But again, it's always, you have those moments of like, where you question yourself. Even if you're the most confident person in the world, you're still going to question things at times, which is kind of important, I think, because it does force you to take action. And I'm a big believer, and I always say to my girls, take massive action. Don't just take like a little step. Be like, okay, well, if this is making me unhappy or this is making me question who I am, then like, do something about it. Don't just like sit in your shit. Like, it's one of the biggest things I always say, like, you sit in your shit, you're just going to smell. Like, nobody wants that. So like, you know, if you step in dog shit, you don't just leave the shoes on. Like, you go take them off, you know. So I think for me, it was a big turning point. And I just kind of actually had a break from Instagram, and that was the best thing I did. We went to Bali for 5 days and just got away and just posted what I felt like and did my thing and got back, and, you know, the business was still there, clients were still there, things were fine. And so I think that you're just going to have those little moments all the time. So I don't, you know, I want people to think it is important to gain confidence and grow, but at the same time, it's okay to have those little moments of like self-doubt or, you know, having those moments that make you shift and take action into a new change or, you know, a new moment. It was the same with the business. Like, I've been so busy and working so hard and, you know, putting in so much work. I work ridiculous hours, but you know, at the end of the day, I'm doing that for a reason. And if there wasn't a why behind it, like in terms of like, well, when I do have a kid, financially, I'll be able to have a little bit of time off and we'll be able to open our gym and do these things. And, you know, but then Sean always says to me, even if you weren't doing all those things, you'd probably find something else to do with your time. So I guess that's just my personality. Maybe since having that kind of tough upbringing with my mum, it resonating back to, I guess, where we started out, having that hardship with losing my brother, like, I've always been someone that like just wants to always keep moving forward. And I think that's really, really important. Never staying stuck in one place or one person or, you know, one aspect of life. So
that's amazing.
I think that kind of wraps it up a little bit. Yeah.
A couple quick questions and we'll wrap up. Mm-hmm. Knowing everything that you've been through, been through a lot, and still more to come with your pregnancy.
I know. Thank God I'm not vomiting anymore.
What would you say the quality of your life is like now?
It's pretty amazing. Like, it's not easy, and I don't want people to mistake easy with good, and that's something I always say, because I do work a lot. And I was up till 12:30 last night doing client adjustments for my girls, because I'd been with 6 hours from them posing that day, and then I've got my 30, 40 lifestyle clients to worry about. So it's not easy, but the thing is, for me, my job makes me happy. I get excitement from my clients doing well. My partner makes me happy. My friends make me happy. My dogs make me happy. We built a beautiful house last year. That was one of my goals while I was 30, was to own my own house. And we built a house, and I always said I wanted to live within like 15 minutes walk to the beach, and we did that. And so it's not about, again, for me, it wasn't about building this $1 million big mansion. It was the lifestyle it involved in. And that for me is, the ocean's always been a big part of my life. So being near that. So that makes me happy, you know, and again, it's appreciating those things as well. So I'd say the quality of my life is very, very good. I probably need to work a little less, and I need to have a little more downtime. That's probably the one thing that I'm working on. But I have actions in place to get to that position, even if that's not right now. And I think that's important.
Yep.
If there's something in your life right now that you know is like 5 things are good, but one thing's a little bit like still giving you a bit of pain or giving you a bit of hardship, but there's an out and there's a plan. It was much the same with when I was going through my double uni degree and my master's. I was working full time, prepping, all of that, but it was for a reason. I think if you're doing things that are making you unhappy for no reason, like you're going to a job that you hate every single day and you haven't got a plan, like, well, I'm going to apply for other jobs. I'm going to leave that industry. I'm going to take a risk.
Yep.
But you're complaining about it. That's when I'm a bit like, come on, dude. Like, and same with my work. I know I work a lot, but I'm not going to whinge about it to people because they'd be like, well, you don't have to. You work for yourself. Like, you could just work a little less. But for me, it's not really about that. So I think that, the quality of your life is a big thing for me, is dictated by what you focus on. So if, again, I focused on the fact that I haven't had a weekend in a very long time, then I would probably be a lot more negative. But if I focus on the fact that my clients are getting amazing results and they're so thankful to have me as a coach, and I know in a few weeks' time when the shows are over that I'll probably, be a little bored and I'll be like, what is this, a weekend off? But I think, again, it's where your focus goes, your energy flows is one of my favourite sayings. I feel like I'm all on the quote train today.
Yeah, you are.
That's actually one I always steal from our mindset coach, Jason, and he says that constantly to our girls. So wherever you're focused, that's where your energy is going to go. So if you're focusing on the negative in a situation, then you're going to feel like crap. Like if you're focusing on, okay, that was tough, but I learned something from it, then you're going to be more growth-minded rather than staying in that like fixed mindset. So that's a
cool.
big one. Yeah.
Last question. If you had the chance to put a message on a billboard somewhere where you'd know thousands of people would see it every day, what would that message be?
Probably the quote I said before, where I would say, like, focus on your appreciations and lower your expectations. Absolutely, yeah.
You are coming out with the quotes.
Yeah, I think that'd be the biggest one, because I just think that we live in a world where we are, especially in Australia, like, we have a good life here.
Oh,
and like, I would love that billboard to just be anywhere in Australia, even America,